All right, guys, so here I'm going to give my reaction to the updated college football playoff rankings. This is the second week they're doing it here, week number 11, and I think this is probably the easiest way to do it. Just go, from 25 to 21, from 20 to 16, and up, just because you can see how the teams have changed. So Kansas State still remains inside the top 25, absolutely. I think Kansas State is a top 20 team personally. They're very solid. They lose on the road to Texas. It was a close game. They almost won it. North Carolina back into the ranks. They crushed Campbell, the FCS team. Not surprising there. They are 7-2. You can respect it. You do have Tulane up one spot, sitting at number 23. I do think right now, when you look at the group of five, New Year's Six contender, I'm guessing the committee is going to try and guard against picking Tulane because, guys, when you think about it, Tulane had their chance last year. Let's give someone else a shot. I think teams that could get a shot in a New Year's Six game would be SMU, possibly Fresno State. If Air Force somehow wins out, they would only have one loss. You can see Tulane at 23. But again, we understand they beat USC, good for them, but we'll see what happens with them. You can see Iowa somehow ranked. It's just crazy to me. I know Iowa is 7-2, but goodness, like the worst offense in college football history. But there they are. I mean, they do have a good defense. They play in a horrible division, so it does help them. Arizona at number 21, that is crazy. Arizona, a 3-loss team, 3 spots in front of North Carolina, who has Drake May. That just shows you how good Arizona has been recently, and even their losses have been very close. They have a really high upside. They've done a great job this year, Arizona. You can see Notre Dame down 5 spots. That's going to negatively affect Ohio State's resume. They're sitting at 7-3, but Notre Dame should very easily finish at 9-3, considering the rest of their schedule is relatively easy, so they're probably going to finish somewhere in the range of 16 to 17 if they do finish at 9-3, maybe even a little bit higher. LSU down to number 19. That's going to hurt Florida State's resume. They're very likely to finish at 9-3 because they have an easy rest of the schedule. Utah remains at number 18 at 7-2. I agree with that. I would have them as a low-end 2-loss team. Oklahoma down to number 17. So that comes down to the fact that Kansas beat Oklahoma. Now, personally, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this. I would still have Oklahoma above Kansas, just because when you look at the context of that game, it was on the road for Oklahoma. It's also a situation where the analytics love Oklahoma. I would still have them inside of my top 15. Not that it's a huge deal, but you can see Kansas at number 16. That's a solid win for Kansas at Iowa State. I did pick Iowa State to win that game, and they shut me up, so good for them. Moving on to number 15, you can see Oklahoma State. That's the thing. It's like, how can you put Oklahoma State below Oklahoma when they've got the same record and Oklahoma State just beat them? So they're up to number 15. They've had a nice Cinderella run here after a horrible start to the season. Missouri sitting at number 14. They only moved down 2 spots, losing to Georgia on the road, but covering the spread. That's a respectable outcome for them. Tennessee up 4 spots to number 13. How about the real winners in this? Tennessee and Oregon State. Who did Tennessee beat? UConn. Yeah, and they move up 4 spots, but there they are at number 13. They've got some huge games coming up. Missouri and Georgia. Wow, those are big games. It would be good to see Tennessee go 1-1 in those games. If they were able to do that, they would stay inside of the top 15 for sure. Oregon State at number 12. They're up 4 spots. They've had a very solid year. And Louisville, the first 1-loss team on the list, they are at number 11. The question with Louisville is, if they do win out, would they have a chance at the playoff being a 1-loss conference champion? I don't think so. And the reason is mainly because their loss is really bad, and they had a lot of really close games early in the season, which is going to negatively affect their analytics. But we will see. It would be cool to get Louisville into the playoffs as kind of a random team. Moving on inside of the top 10, Penn State sitting there back at number 10. They've got the bad road loss to Ohio State, but here's the huge opportunity for them. With everything surrounding Michigan football, can Penn State take advantage of the distractions at home and possibly win that game. They're only about 4-point underdogs. The analytics have it as a toss-up. This is huge. If Penn State somehow beats Michigan, they will catapult possibly inside of the top 6, maybe even inside of the top 5. Their only loss, again, on the road at the number 1 team, and they beat Michigan. That's a great resume. We will see. Ole Miss moves up 1 spot to number 9. The questions surrounding Ole Miss, it gets thicker. They're inside of the top 10. They face a Georgia team. If they somehow win that game, could you imagine Ole Miss finishing with 1 loss, not making the SEC championship? Their only loss was to Alabama on the road. It's very interesting. Bama at number 8. I thought they were going to move Bama up, but then you have to look, well, Texas is at number 7. Can you really put Alabama in front of Texas? That's the whole head-to-head thing. I do think when you have a matchup like Alabama-Texas, it's really hard to move Alabama in front because Bama lost at home. It wasn't like it wasn't like a Oklahoma-Kansas situation where Oklahoma went on the road, lost. It was kind of a rainstorm. It was weird. This was a game that Alabama just got beat down by Texas. Texas handled them. And it's just very hard to see Alabama moving in front of Texas if both of those teams have 1 loss, just because the game was in Tuscaloosa and it was very clear that Texas was the better team on that night. I think if Texas wins out because they have that non-conference win, they are 1,000% in the playoff there. And then moving on to the top 6, you can see Oregon coming in at number 6. So yes, everybody loves Oregon right now. The analytics love Oregon, but their resume is not the strongest. We will see. Washington at number 5. Washington has some big wins. They have an amazing strength of record, which is really good for them, but they have really bad analytics. So it's kind of a combination of things. They're at number 5. Florida State sitting at number 4. They've got some key wins, but their win against LSU is a little bit weaker. I think it's very obvious for Florida State. Win out, you're probably going to be in that 2v3 game. If you do drop a game before, like let's say they lose to Miami somehow and then end up winning the ACC, so they're a 1-loss conference champion, would they be in? I think it depends on a lot of the other factors surrounding the other conferences, but they would have a pretty good shot. You can see Michigan sitting at number 3 right there. Obviously, Michigan has their 2 huge games, both Penn State and Ohio State, in a backloaded schedule. They faced basically no one, so it's very hard to put Michigan at number 1 at this point. Georgia at number 2. There was kind of the argument, would you move Georgia in front of Ohio State? Because Ohio State struggled with Rutgers. They were losing, going into the second half of that game. Georgia gets a good win on their resume against Missouri. It wasn't a great performance. They won by 9 points. They were like 15-point favorites, but Missouri's still a ranked team. It's a ranked win. Overall, I really don't have a problem with it. And Ohio State coming in at number 1 just because of their resume. I mean, if you want to say who would be favorited right now in a neutral field, Georgia or Ohio State, it's going to be Georgia. Michigan or Ohio State, I would say it'd be slightly Michigan. So, you could make an argument that other teams are better than Ohio State, but it's not like it's cut clear and dry. And the other problem for Georgia is they started the season and it was a horrible schedule, 0-5 against the spread. Michigan just hasn't faced anyone, so you can kind of understand keeping Ohio State at number 1 there. And then the all-important strength of record metric, which always predicts the playoff correctly. It always has the top 4 teams. This is at the end of the season, the Bible on what they use. You can see Washington is number 2 in strength of record. And if you look at their remaining strength of schedule on the far right, it's 10th. So realistically, this is with Washington, I originally thought they couldn't lose a game just because their analytics are so bad. But now I'm looking at their strength of record and I'm wondering, what if they lose one of these games and then still win the Pac-12? I think they would be in pretty easily because their strength of record would still be top 4 very likely, considering their remaining strength of schedule. You add on to the Pac-12 championship, facing Oregon, beating them again. That's another huge win. I think they would be in. You have Ohio State at number 1. That is huge for them because Ohio State can sit there and say, we have a remaining strength of schedule of number 7 and our strength of record is already number 1 and our FPI is already number 1 and we're currently ranked number 1. You would think this could set up for Ohio State to where it's the same situation as last year. You can actually afford a loss to Michigan and still get into the playoff, but I don't think it's that simple for the Buckeyes because last year they got very lucky when USC lost. Otherwise, they would have not made the playoff. You do have Alabama sitting at number 4 in strength of record. Texas sitting at number 5. Texas it's very obvious. If Texas wins out, they're going to be in. If Alabama wins out, they have to be. I mean, Alabama has a really good resume. And then to add on to the fact they would win the SEC and beat Georgia. Yeah, Bama wins out, Texas wins out. They're both in, I would say, guaranteed. I just can't see a scenario where they would be out. Ole Miss at that point would be out no matter what. Georgia at that point would be a really weird one to judge because originally Georgia, if you looked at their schedule in the preseason, I was pissed off at it. And I said, listen, if Georgia goes into the SEC game undefeated and loses, they're out of the playoff. I don't care that they're only a one-loss team. I don't care that they've won back-to-back national titles. But now you look at their schedule and you start seeing Georgia build a resume because Missouri's a lot better than we thought. Tennessee is still good this year. They're a top 20 team. Some people thought they were going to end up unranked. And you're also looking at an Ole Miss team who's very likely going to finish the season top 20, even with a loss to Georgia. So Georgia is going to assemble a good resume before the SEC championship. Could that enable Georgia to lose the SEC championship and still make the playoff if they lose to Alabama? Because you also, like, the thing with Georgia, you've got their history surrounding them. And what I mean by that is they've won back-to-back national titles. Are you really going to leave a one-loss Georgia out of the playoff? I think it depends on other situations. You do have Michigan there. Michigan needs to win out. I think if Michigan loses a game, they're done just because their non-conference was so horrifically bad. The only thing I would say to Michigan fans, obviously there's a lot of stuff surrounding their program. Keep rooting for UNLV. I know it sounds crazy, but UNLV actually isn't that bad. And that win, if UNLV ends up, finishing like 9-3, that could be an okay non-conference win. And then you have Penn State sitting at number 9 in strength of record. They need to beat Michigan, no doubt about it. Oregon at number 10, so Oregon a little bit lower. James Madison actually at number 11. Pretty shocking that they're that high. I mean, look at their strength of schedule at 115th right now, but their strength of record is at 11, and James Madison is disqualified from competing in the playoff, obviously. They can't even be ranked. Louisville sitting at number 12. That's pretty good for Louisville, Missouri, and then Utah at number 14. But that is just the update there. And then this is something I saw on X. You can see this person reviewing it. What is the criteria? It feels like each team's ranking is based on something different. Well, the problem is, and this is the issue, you can see what is the justification for having Ohio State over Georgia. There's just no true number 1 team in college football. Nobody is the complete package right now. Ohio State has the resume, but they don't have the eye test. Georgia has the eye test, but they don't have the resume. Michigan has the eye test, but they don't have the resume. So that's why you're seeing, and I'm not trying to defend the committee, I'm just saying this is what's happening because nobody is the perfect team. That's why people are bickering on who should be number 1. And that's how I would say that. How is FSU still ahead of Washington? I would say because of analytics, that's how FSU would be ahead of Washington. FSU's big wins, LSU, they beat Duke with an injured Riley Leonard. Clemson is still a good team. And then they had a close call versus Boston College. Washington's big wins, Oregon, Arizona, USC. Yeah, they're comparable resumes, I think. And Washington's had a number of close games against bad Pac-12 opponents, so I don't really have an issue with FSU being ahead of Washington at this point. Oklahoma State, Kansas, Oklahoma. The committee did it great with honoring head-to-head games. Yeah, that's another one where I disagree with that. I think Oklahoma should be in front of Kansas. I understand Kansas beat Oklahoma, but again, we have to add context to that situation. It was a rainstorm. The game was delayed. Oklahoma was on the road. Imagine if that game is at Oklahoma. I think they win it. So it's like, there's already a built-in advantage to being the home team. The NCAA, who claims to care about student athletes, is depriving James Madison of the opportunity to be ranked and totally robbing them. Now, maybe this will be me being the Christmas Scrooge, but rules are in place for a reason, and James Madison is just disqualified. I'm sorry, it is what it is. James Madison, look at this. James Madison should not only be ranked, but they should be the highest ranked group of 5 team and in contention for a New Year's 6 bowl. Well, when it comes to the group of 5 and New Year's 6, James Madison's disqualified. I don't think Tulane is making it. They had their chance last year. So I think it comes down to SMU, Fresno State, Air Force, and maybe another random team gets thrown in there. Preferably, though, guys, I would want to see SMU or Fresno State. Honestly, probably SMU, because SMU has the highest upside of any group of 5 if you look at their analytics. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on X. Link to that's always in the description.